This is my 46th graduation at Tufts, so I am not the usual drop-in and depart commencement speaker. There's no limousine waiting to whisk me off to Logan Airport or federal marshals to protect my august body as I escape from the campus. On Monday, it's back into Ballou Hall and 3 late examinations that have to be graded. But in all of that time, in all of those 46 years, no faculty member has ever been given the privilege to get in yet one more brief word before you leave this university. This is also a day shared with family, and I am very mindful of my own parents as I stand here. My childhood habits have always prompted me to speak quickly. I grew up during the Depression in one room behind the candy store in Hoboken, New Jersey, in a bedroom shared by my immigrant parents, my brother, and me. I don't remember why, but at times we only had one pillow. And my mother would say to me, "Sleep fast, your father needs the pillow." Well, the apple doesn't roll far from the tree. I am what my parents made me. Since then, I do most things quickly, and these remarks will follow that pattern. I should also acknowledge here what else my parents gave to me. My mother couldn't read. She never spent a day in school. My father had a rudimentary old world education, but they imbued me with an optimism and a knowledge that I would go to college no matter what. My mother did whatever she could to drive me on. I lived for her approval and try as hard as I could to please and satisfy her. She would look at me at my excellent report card, which was incomprehensible to her, with very mournful eyes and say, "Your brother's doing better." Well, he wasn't doing better, but what did I know? Standing here, I sense the responsibility for all of my colleagues in all of the schools as they prepare to move on, for you to move on physically. I say physically leave because technology has given us the opportunity to hold on to you and for you to hold on to us. You are only a mouse click away from as much of us as you want. Email is not some techno tool of the devil, as my generation once thought. Don't miss this opportunity to continue our education with us. In this day and age, the word commencement is more than just a new beginning. It's a continuation. Parents paid for 4 years, and you get the next 40 free. If you're wise enough to hold on to us. And that goes for you in the professional and graduate schools. Never let go of your faculty. Most of the students sitting here this morning will live well into the 21st century. And whether you like it or not, you've embarked on a journey of lifelong learning, and we would like to stay a part of it. For those of you graduate students who have already selected a career path, you cannot imagine the changes that will occur in the next 50 years in your professional fields. For the health scientists and engineers, contemplate the fact that 90% of all the biomedical and technological discoveries since the beginning of recorded civilization have occurred in my lifetime. Can you imagine what the next half-century will produce? At the beginning of my parents' lifetime, no one had ever heard of vitamins or nutrition. You graduates of the Friedman Nutrition School have an opportunity to feed the world, but hunger and starvation continue to haunt us. Biomedically, we are still tyrannized by the past. Polio, infantile paralysis, the scourge of my childhood and thought eradicated, is breaking out again in Africa. Lou Gehrig died 70 years ago of a disease that bears his name and for which there is still no cure. The graduates of the health science schools have enormous problems to solve for humans and animals who share this planet, and opportunities to solve them. You will need all the help you can get, so keep that electronic mouse close by. We're here waiting for you. Fletcher students have a different problem. They have to figure out a way to keep the world safe, how to deal with the 6,000-year-long cycle of wars that Homo sapiens have not been able to stop. Peace on earth, goodwill toward all is a formula supremely wished for, but would mean the end of civilization as we have known it, because all we've known is war. The only thing that changes is technology, and that is intended to show us the hope for a better world and in the same time to frighten us to death. Human nature doesn't change, or at least it hasn't yet. So to the Fletcher graduates, find a way to heal the world. Make it safe and give it peace. Good luck to you for the sake of us all. For the undergraduates gathered here this morning, this is really... Okay, this is really another beginning, another first step. We never thought that those 34 or 40 courses actually provided you with all the wisdom that you needed. For most of you, we really didn't even prepare you for a specific job. We prepared you for a life of risk, change, and the capacity to think, grow, learn, and be happy, to discover what it is that gives you satisfaction. You weren't educated at Tufts for your first employment. You weren't educated for you were educated for your last one. So don't worry about the first job. The one you'll have in 3 years hasn't even been invented yet. You may have had several different careers. Many of you have already changed majors in college. One of you came as a pre-med student, and she is leaving to become an Episcopalian priest. Some of you have found your passion, others have not yet. And that's the uniqueness of American higher education. It provides ample room for changing directions, for exploring, even in the worst of economic times, for creating your own world of happiness and satisfaction. Don't get impatient. It may not happen tomorrow, but you are uniquely equipped to deal with a changing world. If I could have pressed a button, I would have made all of you at least partial history majors, to make certain that you are at least connected to the world of your parents and your grandparents. You were born around 1988 or 1989. And if you are like most Americans, the majority of you sitting here this morning, you don't have a great deal of memory for the past. For the faculty, your parents and grandparents, the 20th century defined their lives, which meant 2 world wars, 100 million dead in those conflicts, and technological advancement with a capacity to kill many more. Your world will be that of the 21st century, but if you expect to understand it, you had better make certain how we got here. Each generation has to go from the previous one, learn from its errors, and build. When we were students, my generation and those of your parents and grandparents, we would not have known a Sunni Muslim from a Shiite if we tripped over them. Some of you perhaps don't know the difference, yet many of you do. We are currently fighting a war involving the 3 religions that trace their origins to the patriarch Abraham. That war is being fought in a place sacred to all 3, not far from where hundreds of millions of the earth's inhabitants believe is the site of the Garden of Eden. With apologies to all others of you of world religions, and regardless of your faith or lack of faith, you had better understand the nature of this apocalyptic and messianic time that we live in, and will continue to live in for the rest of this century, the rest of your lives, and the lives of your children yet to come. If there are at least 10 books that I would want all of you to have read, 3 of them are the holy scriptures of these religions that seem uniquely locked in struggle. Don't let anyone tell you about them. Read them for yourselves. Faith is your own business. Our business is to make certain that you understand the conflicts yet to come. If you were to lay a map of Abraham's journeys 4,000 years ago, as described in the book of Genesis in the Hebrew Bible, on top of battle maps used by American forces in Iraq since 2003, you would discover the identical geography framed by the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. If you read the first lines of the Gospel according to Matthew, you would see that Jesus is a direct descendant of Abraham. If you open the Quran, you will count 119 references to Abraham and 50 more to Mary, the mother of Jesus, and to Jesus, more than any other figures. These 3 faiths, locked in a conflict, share a single religious tradition that cannot find peace with each other. There have to be solutions, because once we threw spears, then we learned to shoot guns, and now we can destroy the world. We get smarter, more inventive, but get no closer to peace on earth. For the sake of all of us, you have to do better than we've done. Nothing can help as much as education, now that you know what it is. Keep studying. Read a good newspaper every morning, and don't be the generation that oversaw the end of print journalism. For all of your 4 years here, you had a good newspaper delivered into your hands. E-News is cheap and available, but there is a unique pleasure in drinking a cup of coffee and folding a newspaper over your bagel. Yes, there are iPhones, iPads, the internet, Google, Wiki, web activism, Twitter that tweets, Facebook, Kindle, and Amazon, all providing access to ebooks and electronic shortcuts and more economical access to reading material. But here you were also taught to read books and articles that you held in your hand. The web is wonderful. Advancements in communications will be spectacular in your lifetimes. But a book in your hand, turning a page, is still a miracle. Don't ever stop going to a library. A library is more than just a place to get a book. There is another function in being with people who share the capacity for human interaction. You should have learned that right here, on this hill, in Tishergin, or Sackler downtown, or Webster out in Grafton. The citizens of Alexandria learned it 2,000 years ago. Johannes Gutenberg reinforced it with one technological leap, movable type, 700 years ago, when Europe went in the 50 years from 1450 to 1500, from 100,000 beautifully illuminated manuscripts to 9 million books. The technological advances of the next 50 years could alter how your generation understands the meaning of a library. But don't ever forget the human component of sharing space with books and other people. Allow your continued study of history to connect you to those who came before you. You have 2 feet. Plant one in the past and one in the future. Without understanding the origins and causes of World War I and the subsequent peace treaties and agreements that created new nations in Europe and in the Middle East left 2 European powers still in control, you will not understand the significance of World War II or the current conflicts in South Asia, the Middle East, and Africa. Understand your own country. Americans should at least read de Tocqueville, who, as only an outsider could, saw how America's racial demons could drive us to civil war. And read Gordon Wood to discover what our founding fathers really said and did. Continue to study geography and to look at maps. We are not noted for our geographic literacy in this country. When the attack on Pearl Harbor took place on December 7, 1941, I was sitting in my parents' car with my older brother Melvin, listening to a professional football game while my mother was buying a coat. When I heard the name Pearl Harbor, I looked to my 10-year-old brother and asked, "Where's Pearl Harbor?" He didn't know. My parents came back from shopping and I asked them, "Where's Pearl Harbor?" They didn't know. We went back to Hoboken and Mr. Schulman, our butcher, was sitting in front of his candy store and his butcher shop. "Mr. Schulman, where's Pearl Harbor?" Mr. Schulman, who knew everything, finally told me, "It's off the coast of Long Island and they're bombing Brooklyn." That is what Americans had in the way of geographic literacy at the beginning of American involvement in World War II. Do better. When reading your daily newspaper, read it with an eye to the historical literacy. If to understand the nature of the conflict in Northern Ireland, you have to review the causes of the 17th century's 30 Years' War that pitted Protestant against Catholic in Europe, then do it. If you need to review the role of Martin Luther in the enormous 16th century schism in the Catholic Church that resulted in the Reformation, then do it. If to understand the Sunni insurrection of al-Qaeda in Iraq, you have to review the Battle of Karbala in 680 that created the shattering of Islam and the creation of the Sunni majority and the Shia minority, then do it. If you read something and are not certain what its deeper meaning is, get to the mouse clicker and reach back to your faculty. You also discover the utter satisfaction of reading good literature, a novel, a story, or a poem, of sitting under a tree on this hill and reading Proust, or going to the Balch Theater or Granoff for Cole Porter or Henry Purcell. Hold on to it. Never be embarrassed by your love of beauty or art. You will continue to study, but not because you have to like people who may want to harm you, but because you need to understand what makes them tick, their culture and their values. You don't have time for stereotypes. You've learned from your faculty the difference between opinion advocacy and critical thinking. We'll know in about 40 years if we did a decent job in preparing you for your lives. If you continue to get better at everything you do, if you can take risks, change directions, remain intellectually flexible and engaged in the world around you, if you can discover a modest degree of happiness regardless of your income, then we will take some credit for lighting the candle of your mind. And now the conclusion, with thanks to Hamlet and Shakespeare's old Polonius, the advice giver. Start your own motor. Don't wait for anyone to tell you what to do. Believe that your tank is always half full, never half empty. Work hard at whatever you do, whatever you believe in. You can accomplish what you want to without ever having to hurt someone. Be competitive, but never lose sight of the rest of humanity. Be civil in all of your arguments and struggles, and demand civility from others. Remember the past. Keep looking backwards so that you can look forward and make some sense out of it. Expect nothing. Blame no one. Do something and don't whine. Keep your memo short, watch your grammar, proofread, and spelling still counts. Good luck, but not goodbye.